Chapter 21, that God is his own essence. From what precedes, we can conclude that God is his own essence, quiddity, or nature. In everything which is not its own essence or quiddity, or there must be some kind of composition, for since each thing contains its own essence, if a thing contains nothing besides its own essence, all that a thing is would be its essence. Therefore, if a thing is not its own essence, there must be something in it besides its essence. Consequently, there must be composition in it, for which reason the essence in composition things has the signification of a part, as humanity in a man. Now it has been shown, chapter 18, that there is no composition in God, therefore God is his own essence. Again, it seems that only that which does not enter into a definition of a thing is beside the essence of that thing, for a definition signifies what a thing is. Now only the accidents of a thing do not enter into its definition, and consequently only accidents are in a thing besides its essence. But in God there are no accidents, as we shall show further on, chapter 23. Accordingly, there is nothing in him besides his essence, therefore he is his own essence. Moreover, forms that are not predicated of subsistent things, whether the latter be taken universally or singly, are forms which are not of themselves single, subsistent forms individualized in themselves. For we do not say that Socrates or man or an animal is whiteness, because whiteness is not singly subsistent in itself, but is individualized by its subsistent subject. Likewise, natural forms do not subsist singly in themselves, but are individualized in their respective matters. Hence, we do not say that the individual fire, or fire in general, is its own form. Moreover, the essence or quiddities of genera or species are individualized by the signate matter of this or that individual, even though the quiddity of a genus or species includes form and matter in general. Hence, we do not say that Socrates or man is humanity. Now, the divine essence exists singly in itself and is individualized in itself, since it is not in any matter, as shown above, chapter 17. Hence, the divine essence is predicated of God, so that we say God is his own essence. Further, the essence of a thing is either the thing itself or is related to it in some way as cause, since a thing derives its species from its essence. But nothing can in any way be a cause of God, for he is the first being, as shown above, chapter 13, therefore God is his own essence. Again, that which is not its own essence is related in respect of some part of itself to that essence as potency to act. Therefore, the essence is signified by way of form, for instance, humanity. But there is no potency in God, as shown above, chapter 16. Therefore, it follows that he is his own essence. Chapter 22, that in God essence and existence are the same. From what has been shown above, we may go on to prove that in God essence, or quiddity, is not distinct from his existence. For it has been shown above, chapter 13, that there is a thing which exists of itself necessarily, and this is God. Now necessary existence, if it belong to a quiddity which is not that existence itself, is either inconsistent with or repugnant to that quiddity, as existence in itself is to the quiddity of whiteness, or else is consistent or associated with it, for instance, that whiteness exists in some other thing. In the first way, the existence that is necessary in itself will not be consistent with that quiddity. For instance, whiteness does not exist in itself. In the second way, either the existence must be dependent on the essence, or both of them on some other cause, or the essence on the existence. The first two are in contradiction with the very notion of necessary existence in itself, for if it depends on something else, it no longer exists necessarily. From the third, it follows that this quiddity is added accidentally to the thing which exists necessarily in itself, because whatever follows on the essence of a thing is accidental to it. Therefore, God does not have an essence distinct from his existence. Against this, however, it might be urged that this existence does not depend absolutely on the essence, and in such a way that it would not be at all without the essence, but that it depends as regards the conjunction by which they are united together. And thus this existence is necessary in itself, while the conjunction is not necessary in itself. But this answer does not avoid the above impossibility, for if this existence can be understood without this essence, it will follow that this essence is related accidentally to this existence. Now this existence is that which exists necessarily in itself, therefore this essence is related accidentally to that which exists necessarily in itself. Therefore it is not its quiddity, but God is that which exists necessarily in himself. Therefore this existence is not God's essence, but something subsequent to it. But if this existence cannot be understood without that essence, then it absolutely depends on whatever its conjunction to that essence depends on, and thus the same conclusion follows. Further, each thing exists by its own existence. Further, that which is not its own existence does not exist necessarily in itself, but God exists necessarily in himself. Therefore, God is his own existence. Moreover, if God's existence is not his essence, and it cannot be a part of him, since the divine essence is simple, as shown above, chapter 18, it follows that this existence is something besides his essence. Now, whatever is becoming to a thing besides its essence is becoming to it through some cause. For those things which are not one essentially must be united through some cause, if they are united together. Therefore, existence is becoming to that quiddity through some cause. Either then this cause is something essential to that thing, or the essence itself, or else it is some other thing. If the former and the essence exists according to that existence, it follows that a thing is a cause of its own existence. But this is impossible, for according to the understanding, the cause exists before the effect, and consequently, if a thing is the cause of its own existence, it would be understood to exist before having existence, which is impossible unless it be understood that a thing is the cause of its own accidental existence, which is a relative existence. Now this is not impossible, for we find an accidental being caused by the principles of its subject before the substantial being of the subject is understood to exist. However, we are now speaking not of accidental, but of substantial existence. If, on the other hand, existence is becoming to the essence of reason of some other cause, then whatever requires existence from another cause is caused, and is not the first cause. But God is the first cause, having no cause, as shown above, chapter 13. Therefore, this quiddity that acquires existence elsewhere is not the quiddity of God. Therefore, it is necessary that God's existence is his own quiddity. Moreover, existence denotes a kind of act, since a thing is said to exist not through being in potency, but through being in act. Now everything to which an act is becoming, and which is distinct from that act, is related thereto as potency to act, for act and potency are reciprocal terms. Accordingly, if the divine essence is distinct from its existence, it follows that his essence and existence are mutually related as potency and act. Now it has been proved that in God there is nothing of potency, and that he is pure act, chapter 16. Therefore God's essence is not distinct from his existence. Again, all that cannot exist unless several things concur is composite. Now no thing in which essence and existence are distinct from one another can exist unless several things concur, namely its essence and existence. Therefore everything in which essence and existence are distinct is composite, but God is not composite, as proved above, chapter 18. Therefore God's existence is his essence. Further, everything exists through having existence. Therefore, nothing whose essence is not its existence exists by its essence, but by participation of something, namely existence. Now that which exists by participation of something cannot be the first being, because that in which a thing participates in order to exist is prior to it, but God is the first being, to whom nothing is prior, chapter 13. Therefore God's essence is his existence. This sublime truth Moses was taught by the Lord, for when he asked the Lord, if the people of Israel ask me, what is his name, what shall I say to them? The Lord answered, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, he who is has sent me to you. Exodus 3:13 through 14. Thus declaring his own name to be he who is. Now every name is appointed to signify the nature or essence of a thing. Therefore it follows that God's very existence itself is his essence or nature. Moreover, the Catholic doctors have professed this truth, for Hilary says in his book on the Trinity, existence is not an accident in God, but the subsisting truth, the abiding cause, and the natural property of his essence. And Boethius also says in his book on the Trinity that the divine substance is existence itself, and all other existence proceeds therefrom. Chapter 23, that there is no accident in God. From this truth it necessarily follows that nothing can accrue to God besides his essence, nor anything be accidentally in him. For existence itself cannot participate in something that is not of its essence, although that which exists can participate in something else. For nothing is more formal or more simple than existence, hence existence itself can participate in nothing. Now the divine substance is existence itself, chapter 22. Therefore he has nothing that is not of his substance. Therefore no accident can be in him. Moreover, whatever is in a thing accidentally has a cause of being there, since it is added to the essence of that in which it is. Therefore, if anything is in God accidentally, this must be through some cause. Consequently, the cause of the accident is either the divine substance itself or something else. If it is something else, this other thing must act on the divine substance, since nothing introduces a form, whether substantial or accidental, into some recipient, unless it acts upon that recipient in some way, for to act is nothing but to make something to be actual, and it is this by a form. Therefore God will be passive and movable to some agent, which is against what has been decided above, chapter 13. If, on the other hand, the divine substance itself is the cause of the accident that is in it, then it is impossible for it to be the cause as receiving it, since then the same thing in the same respect would make itself to be an act. Therefore, if there is an accident in God, it follows that he receives that accident in one respect and causes it in another, even as bodies receive their proper accidents through the nature of their matter, and cause them through their form. God, therefore, will be composite, the contrary of which has been proved above, chapter 18. Again, every subject of an accident is compared to it as potency to act, because an accident is a kind of form, making a thing to exist actually according to accidental existence. But there is no potency in God, as shown above, chapter 16, therefore there can be no accident in him. Moreover, everything in which something is accidentally is some way changeable as to its nature, since an accident, by its very nature, can be in a thing or not in it. Therefore, if God has something that becomes him accidentally, it follows that he is a changeable, the contrary of which has been proved above, chapter 13. Further, everything that has an accident in itself is not whatever it has in itself, because an accident is not of the essence of its subject. But God is whatever he has in himself, therefore no accident is in God. The middle proposition is proved as follows: a thing is always to be found more excellently in the cause than in the effect. But God is the cause of all things, therefore whatever is in him is found in him in the most perfect way. Now that which is most perfectly becoming to a thing is that thing itself. For it is more perfectly one than when one thing is united to another substantially, as form is united to matter, which union again is more perfect than when one thing is in another accidentally. It follows therefore that God is whatever he has. Again, substance is not dependent upon accident, although accident depends on substance. Now that which is not dependent upon another can sometimes be found without it. Therefore, substance can be found without an accident, and this seems most becoming to a supremely simple substance, such as the divine substance. Therefore, the divine substance is altogether without accidents. The Catholic writers also are in agreement with this statement. Therefore, Augustine says in his book on the Trinity that there is no accident in God. Having established this truth, we are able to refute certain erroneous statements of the law of the Saracens, who say that the divine essence has certain forms added thereto. Chapter 24, that the divine being cannot be specified by the addition of any substantial difference. Again, from what we have said above, it can be shown that we cannot add anything to the divine being that specifies it by an essential specification, as a genus is specified by differences. For it is impossible for a thing to be an act without also those things by which its substantial being is specified. For an animal cannot be an act unless it be either a rational or an irrational animal. Therefore also the Platonists who postulated ideas did not postulate essentially existing ideas of genera, which derive specification from essential differences, but they postulated essentially existing ideas of the species alone, which do not need to be specified by essential differences. If
then the divine being can receive an essential specification from something added to it, that being will not be an act without something added to it. But God's very being is his substance, as shown above, chapter 22. Therefore, the divine substance cannot be an act without some addition, the contrary of which has been shown above, chapter 13. Again, whatever needs something added to it in order to exist is in potency to that thing, but the divine substance is not in potency in any way, as proved above, chapter 16. And God's substance is his being, therefore his being cannot receive essential specification from something added to it. Moreover, whatever makes a thing to be an act and is intrinsic to that thing is either its whole essence or part of its essence. Now that which specifies a thing by an essential specification makes a thing to be an act, and is intrinsic to the thing specified, otherwise the latter could not be specified essentially thereby. Therefore it must be either the very essence or part of the essence of that thing. But if something is added to the divine being, it cannot be the whole essence of God, for it has already been proved, chapter 22, that God's existence is not distinct from his essence. Therefore it follows that it is a part of the divine essence, and thus God would be composed of essential parts, the contrary of which was proved above, chapter 18. Again, that which is added to a thing by way of essential specification does not constitute the notion of that thing, but only makes it to be an act, for rational added to animal makes animal to be an act, but does not constitute the notion of an animal as such, because the difference does not enter into the definition of the genus. Now, if something be added to God to specify him with an essential specification, it must give that to which it is added the notion of the proper quantity or nature, since what is added in this way gives the thing actual being. Now this, namely actual being, is the divine essence itself, as shown above, chapter 22. It follows, therefore, that nothing can be added to the divine being to give it an essential specification, as a difference specifies a genus. Chapter 25, that God is not in any genus. Hence it follows of necessity that God is not in any genus, for whatever is in a genus has something in itself by which its generic nature is specified, for nothing is in a genus without being in one of its species. For in God this is impossible, but in God this is impossible, as shown above, chapter 24, that therefore it is impossible that God be in any genus. Moreover, if God is in a genus, he is either in the genus of accident or of substance. He is not in the genus of accident, for an accident cannot be the first being and first cause, nor can he be in the genus of substance. For substance, that is a genus, is not being itself, otherwise every substance would be its own being, and thus would not be caused by something else, which is impossible, as is clear from what we have said above, chapter 13. Now God is being itself, chapter 22, therefore he is not in any genus. Again, whatever is in a genus differs in its existence from the other things contained in the same genus, otherwise a genus would not be predicated of several things. Now all things that are contained in the same genus must agree in the whatness of the genus, for the genus is predicated of everything in respect of what a thing is. Therefore, the being of anything contained in a genus is beside the whatness of the genus, but this is impossible in God, chapter 24, therefore God is not in a genus. Further, a thing is placed in a genus by the nature of its whatness, for genus is predicated of what a thing is, but the whatness of God is his very being, chapter 22. Now a thing is not placed in a genus according to its being, because then being would be a genus, signifying being itself. It remains, therefore, that God is not in a genus. That being cannot be a genus is proved by the philosopher as follows. If being were a genus, it would be necessary to find a difference in order to contract it to a species. Now no difference participates in the genus, namely so that the genus is contained in the notion of the difference. For thus the genus would be placed twice in the definition of the species, but the difference must be something besides what is contained in the notion of the genus. Now there can be nothing besides what is understood by being, if not being belongs to the notion of those things of which it is predicated. and thus by no difference can being be contracted. It remains therefore that being is not a genus, hence it necessarily follows that God is not in a genus, from which it is likewise evident that God cannot be defined, since every definition is composed of genus and difference. It is also clear that no demonstration is possible about him other than through his effects, because the principle of a demonstration is the definition of that about which the demonstration is made. Someone, however, might think that although the name of substance cannot properly be applied to God because God does not subsist under accidents, yet the thing signified by that term is applicable to him, and consequently he is in the genus substance. For substance is essentially a being, and it is clear that this can be applied to God from the fact that it has been proved, chapter 23, he is not an accident. But to this we reply, according to what has been said, that being in itself is not in the definition of substance. For from the fact that it is described as a being, it cannot be a genus, since it has been already proved that being has not the conditions of a genus, and again, from the fact that it is described as being in itself, for this would seem to denote nothing else than a negation, since it is said to be a being in itself through not being in another, which is a pure negation, and this cannot satisfy the conditions of a genus, for then a genus would not express what a thing is, but what it is not. Therefore, we must understand the definition of substance in this way, that a substance is a thing to which it is fitting not to be in a subject, the word thing being taken from its quiddity, just as being is from existence, so that the meaning of substance is that it has a quiddity to which it is fitting to exist not in another. Now this does not apply to God, for he has no quiddity besides his existence, chapter 22. Hence it follows that he is in no way in the genus of substance, and consequently that he is in no genus, since it has been proved, chapter 23, that he is not in the genus of accident.